Hi, welcome to NicheCraft. My name is Cassie and I'm your host, and today we are going to watch how I made this hand-dyed yarn. So I'm going to go ahead and send you over back to when I made this, and we are going to pick up at the end of that video and I will tell you what my final thoughts are. See you then. Hi guys, it's Cassie. So I am currently about to hand paint this yarn here. So this is a hank that I got from Kramer Yarns, and I got it in a mystery box, so I don't really know what the fiber is, but as you can see, it's a pretty nice 4-weight, and I know it's definitely got some wool in it. And I've decided I'm going to dye this yarn by hand painting it. So I understand that it might not be very easy to see everything downstairs here, because I didn't realize that the lighting isn't as nice here at night, because it's nighttime when I'm dyeing here. And I promised, even to my eye, these do not look like the right colors, but it's true. This is yellow. This is yellow green. This is regular green. This is green and blue mixed together, and that right there is brown. And what I want to do is I want to hand paint this yarn with some brushes. They're going to be sponge brushes, and see if I can create a nice skein of forest. Alright, so I want to make this hank look like a forest by using all of the colors that I just mentioned. I've got this on this plastic wrap because I'm also going to wrap this up, and then I'm going to steam it in the microwave. And by steaming it in the microwave, I mean I'm going to put it in a microwave safe container, and then I'm going to turn on the microwave. So right now is the first test of how potent these dyes are. So like I said, I want to create a foresty look. And so I'm going to start with the yellow, and I'm just going to paint a little places here and there yellow. So as you can see, the yellow is coming up as yellow right here. Not really getting enough on this brush, it doesn't look like, to really be able to paint this that easily. I think I probably should have gotten a wider brush, but you can see I'm going in here and I'm just painting some places here yellow, and hopefully that vinegar will help that to set. So now that I've done some yellow, I'm going to go back in and do some yellow green here, and it's okay with me if it ends up being kind of crossing over a little bit. And I'm going to be doing most of this off camera. Obviously I'm going to need to saturate this all the way through. As you can see, it doesn't go all the way through, so I'm going to have to take care of that, but I just want you to see the different colors. So this is regular green. It's not that yellow green, as you can see here. That's a different color. And then this should be the blue green, that's more of a teal. Yeah, that looks good. And then I have some brown for the trunks of the trees, and I think that that's a really pretty brown that we can use here. And I don't want a whole lot of yellow, but I do want enough to be able to show like the light coming through the leaves of the tree. So obviously I've got a lot of painting to do to fully saturate this, and when I have this fully saturated, I will come back and show you how it's going. Alright? Okay, so when you saw this before, I had just put a little touch of each one of these colors on it. Now you can see how the colors have blended a little bit. And there's still some white pieces under here, so I'm about to flip it upside down and over so that we can paint the other side. But I just wanted to show you that I really tried to saturate each one of these real well. I'm a little bit worried about the water content in here, because it's going to need a lot of steam to set when I set it in the microwave. And I have little drops of different colors over here on my workspace, but I'm not really worried about the colors mixing up so much, because that's the idea of this colorway. And again, I just wanted a hint of yellow here and there to kind of create that idea of the light coming through the trees. So I'm really, really happy with this so far. I'm going to flip it over and paint that, and when I come back, you will see how that turns out once it's flipped over. All right, see you then. All right, guys, again, sorry if the lighting isn't perfect. I didn't realize some of my lights were out downstairs, and I didn't feel like bringing the whole big photography cameras down here. So anyway, we have totally saturated this. It's like coming out if you push on it, so you know that there's a lot of water content in there. So the way that we're going to make this set, partly is that acid because it's vinegar, right? And then the other part is the heat. Okay, so we're going to apply heat to this by rolling it up. And I didn't think about how I was going to do this on camera when I was preparing here, but well, I did, but not at this point. So how we're going to roll it up and try to at least maintain these spots, although obviously it does not matter to me, is that if they like get on each other, because it's kind of the idea behind this colorway, is I'm going to be rolling up each area of this skein, okay, so that the moisture is caught up in there and it will not get out, right? And this wrap does not melt in the microwave at all. It's just going to be there to keep the dye in. And I see how I got that over my counters. No worries though, because it's just food coloring. We're not using like acid dye or anything like that, so that's okay. We can just wipe that off with a paper towel later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this that's wrapped up all nice, and I'm going to put it in a microwave safe container, like a bowl or maybe a plate, and I'm going to start microwaving it. Alright, so I'm preparing the bath, just putting some dish soap in there, and we've let that rest. Alright guys, so you are seeing my counter right now. And this mass right here is actually that yarn that I just dyed. And if you look, you can see that there are little steam bubbles on there. And that's what I was talking about when I said that I wanted to steam it. So right now, as it's holding in that heat, all of this is setting where the dye is binding to the fiber with the help of that acid, which was the vinegar soak that we put it in at first. Well, hi there guys. So this, it's not dry, it's still damp, and I'm gonna let it dry overnight, but this is what it turned out looking like, and I'm actually very happy with it. All right, so we're back again, and we are confronted with this beautiful hank of yarn that has been hand painted, hand dyed by me. This is my first attempt at hand dyeing a yarn. And to some who did not understand what my original vision is, I'm about to show that to you now, but I just wanted you guys to be able to kind of admire the colorway, the way it looks when it's twisted and all of that, so you can see just how this ended up. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you the inspiration of what I was trying to create when I made this, okay? So this right here is a mini skein of Araucania, and this is hand painted yarn. I'm going to go ahead and unhank the yarn so you can see. Again, it's a mini skein, so it's small. Now you can see that this in this way it's really like kind of like a self-striping yarn, and that it's green and it goes to brown. And then that goes around to green. But I wanted to make a colorway that was based on the way it looked when it was hanked up like this. Okay, and I just really love these colors. So let's go ahead and compare this very nice high-end yarn that was hand painted, and you can see very shiny, very beautiful yarn. It's just absolutely gorgeous, to what I created. All right. this is my first time dyeing yarn, so I would say this is definitely a success. So here is a rundown of exactly what I did. First, I took this hank of yarn and I pre-soaked it in about 20 cups of water mixed with 1 cup of vinegar, and I soaked this as well as 2 other hanks and 1 mini hank. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know I didn't just soak this by itself. By itself, it probably would have been closer to maybe 16 cups of water with like a couple of tablespoons of vinegar. So this is a wool fiber for sure, and I got it from Kramer Yarns in one of their mystery boxes. And I've gotten a lot of yarn that is undyed from them, and I cannot wait to do this again. But for now, I just went ahead and did 1 hank. So here are some of the things that I discovered as I did that. After it soaked for about an hour, I had Greg kind of squeeze it out, wring it out, so that it was still damp, but not too damp, because I knew that I was going to be adding dye, which was food coloring, and I mix the food coloring together to make different colors of greens and browns. I had a lighter brown and a darker brown. I had yellow, green, green, and blue green. And then I laid it out flat. It wasn't dry like it is now, but it was damp. And then I took a sponge and I hand painted it by basically taking that sponge and putting it in the cup with the different colors and just pressing it down on here in different random places until I was able to create a colorway that looked kind of like, in my mind, a forest, or the way I view this hank right here. Okay, now this is not, I did not hand dye this. Okay, that's something else. So anyway, so I did that. I found that it wasn't saturating a whole lot, so I started pushing it in there, and then I flipped it over and I did the same thing on the other side, just really making sure every single bit of the fabric or of the yarn was completely saturated with dye. And what me and Greg ended up doing at the end was that we even took some of the yarn, the colors that I liked the best, and we even poured it on. In some places you can see there's almost like lines here where I splotched it on there, you know, so you can see in some places where it's almost like, you know, it's an obvious line right here where I pressed that that in, and I don't mind that, because this is not like, it's not like this is hair. This is wool, and I'm going to be working it up as a strand, you know, strand by strand, so it's not going to show this kind of harsh line right here. Ideally, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have created those harsher lines, though. I would have wanted it to be more gradual, and also ideally, I would have liked it to turn out a lot more saturated than it did. And here's a really good example of that dark brown right here. Okay, so this is a darker brown than this lighter brown. Okay, so if you look really closely, you can see that this yarn actually did not absorb the dye too well. You can even still see that there's, I mean, it feels like it didn't completely absorb it to where it's completely saturated once I rinsed it out. That's okay with me. This was my first time. What I know in the future is to have a higher concentration of dye, probably use something a little bit more strong than food coloring. So we're talking about acid dye. Now, I do have some acid dye. I just have not taken it out to start using yet, because acid dye is something that you do not want to mix with your kitchen. And that's the only place I have to dye yarn, right? So I have to make sure that I have all of the tools that can be designated just for dyeing yarn, and that I have enough safety equipment so that I can safely dye yarn with acid dye, which is going to be very, very saturated, without worrying about contaminating my surfaces and all of that. And before you tell me that I'm really, you know, silly anal, my dad was a microbiologist, so I know that kind of stuff. All right. So anyway, once I had this completely painted, we wrapped it in saran wrap. Now I had it down on saran wrap and I wrapped it there, but then we ended up having to wrap it a second and third time. And then we took the whole saran wrapped thing and we put it on a microwave safe plate, and then we put it in the microwave. We heated up for 2 minutes at first. It did not get a whole lot of steam at that point, but we let it cool down for about a minute, and then we put it on for 2 more minutes. At that point, when we checked on it, we could see the bubbles underneath the saran wrap, so we let it go ahead and sit there for about maybe about 5 to 10 minutes, and then we heated it up again for a total of 6 minutes with some cool down periods in between, just so that it wasn't being shocked too much. Once we did it that last time, we just opened the microwave so that it would have a chance to cool off, not in that enclosed environment, even though it was pretty enclosed from the saran wrap. And then as we started when it felt to the touch that we could pick it up, we took the plate out of the microwave, we put it on the counter, and we let it cool down a little bit more there. Then we started like very gently peeling back the saran wrap, and as long as there was still more steam, we just let it sit there. It's the steam and the heat that was going to set this, okay? So basically, the longer we let it sit, the more bright these colors were going to be. All right. Now, eventually we got to the point where it was like, okay, we couldn't bear not looking at it. So we went ahead and unwrapped it, and I put some warm water that was about the same temperature as the yarn was in a bowl that I used to wash it with dish soap. Now, when I first put it in there, there was a little bit of green runoff, okay? But I was actually surprised that there wasn't a whole lot. But washing it with dish soap gave it the opportunity that if anything didn't set, any of that color didn't set, it could wash out. And what I noticed was the color that was washing out the most was actually blue, not green. So I think that blue-green mix ended up splitting when it was put on here, which I thought was an interesting just note for myself. Anyway, so I washed it until the water ran clean. And then I took this and I let it dry overnight. I just hung it on the faucet of the sink. And then when I got up this morning, I was like really excited, and I went and got it, and it wasn't completely dry. So then I like brought it upstairs and hung it on my bathtub like faucet there. And I mean, I'm very happy with it at this point. There are a little bit of damp places, but they're not like really, really damp. It's just basically it just feels colder than the other places, you know. It's not really like that. So overall, where I did a good job is that I did a lot of research before I did this, so I knew what I was doing and I had a fair idea of what I was going to get into. I think another place that I did a good job was understanding the idea of how different temperatures were going to work with this, because I knew that if this was hot and it was warm and I put it into cold water, it was going to shock it. And I did not want it to get shocked and then start felting. Because again, I don't know what kind of material this is. I don't know if it was pre-treated or if it's prone to felting more than others. So I wanted to make sure that it did not felt. Now, when I look at it, if I'm real critical, because I mean, this did not come out exactly what I wanted, but it came out pretty close. But if I'm real critical, I kind of feel like this color looks a little muddy, almost even heathered in a way, but it does not look vivid and bright and basically, and it could be the fiber that I used, obviously, but it doesn't look as vibrant and as fully saturated, you know, and consistent as this does. Now, I wasn't aiming for it to be perfectly consistent, but I did want it to be a little bit more vibrant. So I just know to either if I want to keep going the food coloring route, which I happen to know I don't, but if I do, if this happened to be a really, really successful, then I would just know to add more food coloring per cup that I made. And I also, but for the most part, I love it. You know, I am going to use this definitely, and I'm going to make something for me. And I was thinking that depending on how much I have left over, I might even make something for you guys and put it in a giveaway, in my next giveaway, just because I really love this. I'm really proud of it, and I think that it came out really nicely. So, I mean, all in all, I think I did a pretty good job, but I know that I could do better. And I know that to get those really bright colors and to really achieve what in my mind I was setting out to do, I'm going to have to go way darker. And I'm going to probably need to use acid dye, which is the kind that the big companies use, basically. And like I said, I do have some. It's just that acid dye you don't want it to touch your counters. You don't want it to touch anything that you're going to cook food in or anything like that, because it can be very toxic and all of that. So I just want to make sure that I have enough safety equipment before I do this again. That said, I know that I can try another run of doing this with maybe Kool-Aid first. I could go to the acid dye route as long as I get enough of that equipment. We do have like rubber gloves, and we have different things that we can use for, you know, for that specifically. Like we have a big pot that we can use for it, and some other equipment. We have masks, and we don't have any safety goggles, and I kind of would like to protect my eyes from that. And I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I would need. But yeah, speaking of gloves, I did not wear gloves, and the dye, just the food dye, it actually did dye my fingers there for a while. I had to wash my hands several times before it came off, but it did, obviously. So that said, the last thing that I can think of to do here, now this is a kind of a big hank, so I can't really hank it up as well as if it was a smaller one, but I wanted to show you what it might look like if it was in the store, by at least attempting to hank it up a little bit. So this is what it would end up looking like, okay, as a product maybe on the shelf, okay? So, you know, you can definitely tell all the different colors there. You can see that there's definitely very different kinds of greens there. Definitely looks foresty. Definitely, I mean, it looks great. I'm looking at it on the camera. It really looks great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm very proud of myself. I just wish that it was more vibrant. So yeah, the last thing that I can think of to do is I am going to now unhang it, and I'm going to cake it up off screen, and then I'm going to bring the cake back and show you the absolute final product with this all caked up. And I think that that would be a great way to finish this video. I hope you really liked it. So hold on, it's going to be super quick for you, but it's going to take a few minutes for me, and I will be back with a cake so you can see how it cakes up. See you then. All right, guys, so there it is. Here is my hand-dyed yarn all balled up. Doesn't that look beautiful? It is just a beautiful forestscape. I think it ended up caking up well. And we've just got a really beautiful piece of art. Now I can tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make myself a hat, and if I have enough, I'm going to make a second hat, and I will probably put that in my next giveaway, and you can own the very first, or at least something that was made using the very first dyed yarn Kassi ever made. And I hope that there are many more dyed videos from here on out. There's one really important thing that I have to say about this yarn before I go, and that is I could not have done this without all of the videos that Kim Knits Tutorials puts out. I'm going to put a link to her YouTube channel in my description, and I want to give a big shout out to her. Kim Knits Tutorials. She hand dyes yarn. She approaches it in a very scientific way. She does all sorts of different kinds of experiments. I watched so many of her videos before I made this, and I think that I would not have had nearly as much success if I had not watched her videos first. Even though I can find issues with this that I would like to correct in the future, this is way better than I thought that I would ever be able to do before I started watching her, and I just cannot recommend her enough. If you are interested in learning to hand paint, to dye, to kettle dye, any kind of method that you can think of, using any kind of dye you can think of, she has probably done it. I've seen her use acid dye, I've seen her use food dye, I've seen her use Kool-Aid, and I know that she has dyed with natural things as well. You know, I'm just making this up because I can't remember exactly what she's used before, but things like coffee or henna or cabbage, or, you know, I'm sure she's used one of those, or beets or something like that. So she has a lot of content on her channel. She had been doing this for years. She also has an Etsy store where she sells her hand-dyed yarn. I'm definitely not there yet. In fact, I don't think I'll ever sell my own hand-dyed yarn. This kind of feels like it would just be a personal project for myself, but I certainly appreciate other people's art when they're able to do it really, really well. And so I just really wanted to give a big shout out to her. She probably doesn't even know who I am, but I'm going to give her a big shout out, and I'm probably going to send her an Etsy message letting her know, hey, you know, you really helped me out. Thank you so much, and I'm going to mention you in a video. All right. Well, again, I really hope you enjoyed this. I will see you soon in another video. Bye for now.